The ultimatum. The Vega 3 station hung in space like a gleaming diamond, its crystalline architecture capturing and refracting the light of 3 nearby stars. The interstellar conclave's headquarters had been deliberately positioned at this symbolic crossroads of galactic civilizations, where trade routes converged and diplomatic missions from 1,000 worlds maintained permanent embassies. Ambassador Dominic Reeves stood at the viewport in Earth's modest diplomatic quarters, his weathered face reflected in the transparent aluminum as he gazed at the swirling nebula beyond. 23 years of service as humanity's voice in the conclave had left visible marks, the silver threading through his once dark hair, the deep lines around his eyes, the permanent furrow between his brows. But it was the invisible scars that weighed heaviest today. "They've finalized the resource allocation directive," said Nadia Volkov, his chief advisor. Her normally calm voice carried an edge of controlled anger as she handed him the data tablet. "It's worse than we anticipated." Dominic scrolled through the document, his expression hardening with each page. The conclave had been building toward this moment for decades, gradually restricting human expansion, imposing increasingly burdensome, regulatory oversight on Earth's colonies, and now this, a directive that would effectively strip humanity of control over its most valuable resources. "They are not even pretending anymore," he muttered. "This isn't regulation, it's confiscation." Nadia nodded grimly. Jupiter's helium-3 operations, the Titan methane refineries, the asteroid belt mining, all to be placed under direct conclave administration. "In exchange, we receive equitable compensation and developmental guidance." Dominic almost laughed at the euphemisms. "Trinkets for our resources and lectures about how primitive we are. How generous." The truth was painful but undeniable. In the century since humanity had joined the conclave, they had never truly been accepted as equals. Their rapid technological advancement frightened the older species, their cultural dynamism threatened established hierarchies, and their resource-rich solar system had become too tempting a prize. "Director Huxley is waiting on your encrypted channel," Nadia said. "She says it's time for your final consultation before the assembly." Dominic nodded and moved to the secure communications room. When the connection established, the holographic image of Octavia Huxley, Director of Earth's Defense Coordination, appeared before him. Her dark skin contrasted with the white uniform of Earth's Unified Military Command. "Ambassador," she greeted him. "I've reviewed the final directive. Our suspicions were correct." "Yes," Dominic replied. "They are going to strip mine our system and call it cooperation. The question is, are we ready?" "Operation Prometheus is fully operational," Huxley confirmed. "The Mars shipyards have completed the final vessels. The Jupiter defense grid is online but dormant. Quantum communication arrays are in place throughout our colonies. We've been preparing for this day since we first suspected the conclave's true intentions 15 years ago." Dominic felt a complex mixture of pride and regret. Pride in humanity's foresight and ingenuity, regret that it had come to this. "And the Arcturus Protocol. Ready for implementation on your signal," she replied. Her expression softened slightly. "Dominic, the people are behind you. Whatever happens in that assembly hall tomorrow, know that." After the communication ended, Dominic spent hours reviewing Earth's position, rehearsing arguments, considering alternatives. But as dawn broke over the artificial day cycle of Vega 3, he knew that diplomacy had reached its end. The conclave had never negotiated in good faith, and they wouldn't start now. The Grand Assembly Hall was a marvel of alien architecture, a vast dome supported by living pillars that pulsed with bioluminescence. Delegates from across the galaxy filled the tiered seating, the insectoid ZHZir with their complex exoskeletons, the ethereal Lumina who existed partially in another dimension, the massive, ponderous Drell whose silicon-based biology gave them lifespans measured in millennia. High Speaker Vormith, a member of the ancient Elixir species whose six-limbed form and iridescent scales marked them as one of the conclave's founding races, called the assembly to order. His voice, translated through neural interfaces, resonated through the chamber. "We come together today to ratify the Resource Allocation Directive, a landmark agreement that ensures equitable distribution of vital materials across our shared galactic community," Vormith announced. This directive represents the culmination of the conclave's highest principles: cooperation, stewardship, and collective advancement. Dominic felt the familiar weight of eyes upon him, some curious, others dismissive, a few sympathetic. The conclave had long since decided that humanity was useful but troublesome, a young species to be managed rather than embraced as equals. Before we proceed to ratification, Vormith continued, are there any final statements from the delegation from Earth? This was the moment. Dominic rose from his seat, his movement deliberate and unhurried as he approached the central podium. The buzz of conversation diminished as curiosity spread through the assembly. Humans rarely spoke at these final sessions. What could they say that would matter now? High Speaker, esteemed delegates, Dominic began, his voice steady. For 112 years, humanity has participated in this conclave. We joined with hope and idealism, believing in the promise of a united galaxy working toward common goals. We shared our art, our science, our perspectives. We fought alongside you during the Proxima incursion. We opened our markets and contributed to collective defense. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the assembly. In return, we have watched our sovereignty erode year by year. We have seen our innovations appropriated without acknowledgement. We have endured restrictions applied to no other member world. And now, with this directive, you would reduce Earth and its colonies to vassals, territories to be harvested for the benefit of the conclave core worlds. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Lumina delegates shimmered with agitation, while the Drell representatives remained motionless, their ancient eyes unreadable. Ambassador Reeves, High Speaker Vormith interjected, your characterization is both inaccurate and inflammatory. The directive ensures sustainable resource management. No, Dominic interrupted, a breach of protocol that caused gasps among the more traditional delegates. Let's dispense with euphemisms. This directive would place 70% of humanity's resource production under direct conclave control. It would restrict our fleet movements within our own system. It would require our colonies to submit to conclave oversight committees. These are not the terms of partnership, they are the terms of subjugation. The ZH0 delegate, Tixon, clicked her mandibles in irritation. Humanity has always been difficult to accommodate. Your species' aggressive expansion and technological experimentation require careful monitoring for the safety of all. Careful monitoring. Dominic replied. Is that what you call the sabotage of our quantum research facilities on Ganymede? Or the trade embargoes against our outer colonies? Or the systematic undermining of our diplomatic initiatives? More murmurs, louder now. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Not everyone in the conclave supported the hardline approach toward Earth. High Speaker Vormith's scales darkened with displeasure. Ambassador Reeves, these accusations are baseless and inappropriate for this forum. The Resource Allocation Directive has been approved by the Conclave Council after thorough deliberation. It is not subject to further negotiation. Dominic smiled thinly. I'm not here to negotiate, High Speaker. I'm here to inform this assembly that Earth rejects the Resource Allocation Directive in its entirety. Furthermore, as of this moment, Earth and all its colonies hereby withdraw from the interstellar conclave. The chamber erupted in chaos. In 3,000 years of conclave history, no world had ever withdrawn. The protocol didn't even exist for such an action. This is outrageous, bellowed the Drell representative, his voice like grinding stone. No world may unilaterally withdraw without council approval. You cannot survive without the conclave's protection, warned a Lumina delegate, her form flickering with agitation. The frontier regions are filled with dangers. We managed before we joined the conclave, Dominic replied calmly. We'll manage again. High Speaker Vormith raised his primary limbs for silence. When the chamber quieted, he addressed Dominic with cold formality. Ambassador Reeves, I urge you to reconsider this rash action. The consequences for Earth would be severe. Isolation from conclave trade networks. Removal of defensive support. Diplomatic severance from all member worlds. Dominic gathered his materials, nodding to Nardia and the rest of the Earth delegation who had risen from their seats. We understand the consequences, High Speaker. Earth has made its decision. As they walked toward the chamber's exit, the ancient Drell representative called after them, his voice carrying a strange mix of warning and respect. The void between stars is cold and dangerous, Ambassador. Do not let pride doom your people to darkness. Dominic paused at the doorway and turned to face the assembly one final time. We've learned something important during our time with the Conclave, he said. The real darkness isn't what lies beyond your borders, it's what happens when you surrender your future for the illusion of security. He looked around the chamber. Earth chooses the stars. As the Earth delegation departed, leaving stunned silence behind them, Dominic activated his secure communicator. Director Huxley, he said quietly. Implement Arcturus Protocol. The Conclave has made its choice. Now we make ours. Throughout the Sol system, hidden installations began powering up. En masse, underground factories that had been operating in secret for over a decade increased production. In the asteroid belt, mining operations shed their civilian disguises, revealing advanced defensive systems. On Earth's moon, vast hangars opened to reveal ships unlike anything the Conclave had seen. Humanity had been preparing for this day since they first recognized the Conclave would never accept them as equals. While maintaining the appearance of compliance, they had been developing technologies the Conclave had forbidden, building defenses the Conclave had outlawed, and preparing for independence the Conclave had deemed impossible. The journey home would be dangerous. The Conclave would not let Earth leave without a fight. But as Dominic watched the crystalline spires of Vega 3 recede through the viewport of the diplomatic vessel, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. The stars awaited. And humanity was ready to claim them. Rising from ashes. 3 weeks after Earth's historic withdrawal from the interstellar conclave, Captain Harlow Reed stood on the bridge of the TCS Defiant, watching as strange energy readings flickered across his tactical display. The vessel, officially classified as a deep space research platform during Earth's conclave membership, now flew openly as the vanguard of humanity's newly revealed defense fleet. Another conclave patrol group at the heliopause, reported Lieutenant Marcus Okafor, his fingers dancing across the sensor console. That makes 15 vessels in the last 48 hours. They are probing our defenses, Harlow said, his voice calm despite the tension radiating through the bridge. Trying to map what we've hidden all these years. Commander Priya Verma, his executive officer, joined him at the tactical display. Her expression was grim as she studied the conclave formation. They are staying just outside our declared territorial boundary. Intimidation without technical provocation. Classic conclave tactics, Harlow agreed. They want us to make their first move, to give them justification for a full-scale intervention. The conclave had responded to Earth's withdrawal with textbook predictability, economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and a steadily increasing military presence around the Sol system. Official broadcasts across conclave space portrayed humanity as dangerous renegades whose internal political instability threatened galactic peace. Captain, called the communications officer, priority transmission from Lunar Command. The holographic display at the center of the bridge shimmered, resolving into the image of Admiral Joaquin Ortega, commander of Earth's unified defense forces. His weathered face bore the strain of sleepless nights, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. Captain Reed, what's your assessment of our visitors? They are being careful, sir, Harlow replied. Staying outside our boundary but mapping every centimeter of it. I count 7 capital ships among their formations, more firepower than they'd need for simple containment. We've detected similar activity at Alpha Centauri and Tau Ceti, Ortega confirmed. They are establishing a cordon around all human settlements. He paused. The Provisional Council has made its decision. We're initiating Phase 2. Harlow exchanged a glance with Commander Verma. Phase 2, the activation of Project Phoenix, humanity's most closely guarded technological development. Understood, Admiral. Defiant stands ready. After the transmission ended, Harlow gathered his senior officers in the tactical room adjacent to the bridge. The ship's AI dimmed the lights as a detailed hologram of the Sol system appeared above the conference table. Ladies and gentlemen, Harlow began, in approximately 6 hours, Earth will unveil the first stage of our response to the Conclave blockade. The Defiant will provide protective coverage for the Ganymede installation during activation. Commander Vermeer stepped forward. For those without Phoenix clearance, what we're about to deploy is a network of quantum displacement nodes, technology the Conclave has forbidden for centuries, claiming it destabilizes space-time. In reality, they've suppressed it because it renders their controlled hyperspace lanes obsolete. Our physicists have not only perfected the technology, added Dr. Naomi Watanabe, the ship's chief science officer, they've expanded its capabilities beyond anything the Conclave has conceived. Instead of navigating through hyperspace, we can create temporary folds in spacetime, allowing instantaneous travel between any 2 points where a node exists. Which means, Harlow continued, the blockade the Conclave is so carefully constructing will become irrelevant. Within days, all human colonies will be connected through a network the Conclave cannot monitor, intercept, or control. The implications weren't lost on anyone in the room. For a century, the Conclave had maintained its power largely through control of interstellar travel routes. Worlds that stepped out of line found their hyperspace access restricted, their economies strangled by isolation. Earth's quantum displacement technology would shatter that leverage forever. Make no mistake, Harlow said, his voice solemn, once we activate the Phoenix network, the Conclave will consider it an act of technological terrorism. They will respond with force. But for the first time, we'll be fighting on our terms, not theirs. As the Defiant moved into position near Jupiter's moon Ganymede, tension throughout the ship reached palpable levels. Everyone understood the historical significance of what they were about to witness, and the dangers it would unleash. At the hidden facility beneath Ganymede's surface, scientists and engineers who had worked in secret for decades made final adjustments to the primary node. Similar preparations were underway at concealed installations throughout human space, facilities that had operated under the guise of mining operations or research outposts, always hidden from Conclave inspectors. Captain, Lieutenant Okafor called out, energy spike at the Ganymede facility. Phoenix activation sequence has begun. Harlow watched as a shimmering field of quantum particles erupted from the facility, expanding outward in a sphere of blue-white energy. The field pulsed once, twice, then stabilized into a translucent dome over the installation. Phoenix Prime is online, announced Dr. Watanabe, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. Node synchronization commencing. Across human space, identical energy fields manifested around hidden installations. On Earth's monitors, they appeared as a network of brilliant points connected by gossamer threads of quantum entanglement, a web that bypassed conventional space altogether. On the Conclave monitoring vessels, alarms blared as sensors detected massive energy patterns unlike anything in their databases. Frantic communications between patrol ships and Conclave command reflected growing panic as they realized something extraordinary was unfolding before them, something outside their understanding or control. The response came swiftly. Within 12 hours, High Speaker Vormuth addressed an emergency session of the Galactic Council, his scales darkened to deep purple with rage. The renegade Earth government has deployed prohibited quantum manipulation technology throughout their territories, he declared. This represents not merely a violation of Conclave technological restrictions, but a direct threat to the stability of spacetime itself. The Council hereby authorizes immediate military intervention to neutralize these dangerous installations. In the observation gallery, Ambassador Dominic Reeves, invited to witness the proceedings as a final diplomatic courtesy, listened without surprise. He had expected nothing less. When the session concluded, he found himself approached by Calvas, a representative of the Arcturian collective, a species that had always maintained more cordial relations with humanity. They fear what they cannot control, Ambassador, Calvas said quietly, the luminous patterns beneath his translucent skin shifting in what Dominic recognized as concern. But some of us question whether the Conclave's path remains true to its founding principles. The Conclave was founded on noble ideals, Dominic acknowledged. Cooperation, mutual protection, shared knowledge. But over millennia, it transformed into something else, an instrument for the established powers to maintain their advantage over emerging species. Calvas nodded subtly. There are more worlds than you might imagine watching Earth's defiance with interest, Ambassador. perhaps even with hope. The conversation was brief but significant. Earth was not as isolated as the Conclave leadership believed. 5 days after Phoenix activation, the Conclave launched its first direct assault. A battle group of 12 warships approached the human colony on Tau Ceti, expecting to find a vulnerable settlement cut off from Earth's support by the blockade. Instead, they encountered a fully prepared defense force backed by technology they couldn't comprehend. When the Conclave vessels opened fire, targeting the colony's quantum node, their weapons met an impenetrable shield of phase-shifted matter, another technology humanity had developed in secret. Return fire from the colony's defense platforms wasn't the crude plasma weapons the Conclave expected, but precisely focused graviton beams that disabled 5 Conclave vessels without destroying them. The remaining ships retreated in disarray, their commanders shocked by both the colony's unexpected capabilities and the deliberate non-lethality of the human response. Similar scenarios played out across human space as the Conclave tested defenses and found them far beyond anything they had anticipated. On Earth, the Provisional Council, formed to guide humanity through the transition to independence, convened in the ancient chambers beneath Geneva. Representatives from all human settlements participated either in person or through quantum projection, creating the first truly unified human government in history. The Terran Coalition of Free Worlds, announced Council President Lydian Gasser, formalizing the name that would represent humanity going forward. Not an empire, not a hegemony, but a coalition of equals bound by shared heritage and mutual respect. In her address to Earth's population, broadcast across human settlements, she outlined the principles of this new coalition: technological freedom, mutual defense, open exchange of knowledge, and respect for the sovereignty of all sentient species. "We did not choose separation lightly," she declared. "For over a century, we attempted to work within the Conclave's framework, to reform it from within. But systems designed to preserve power rarely reform themselves. Sometimes, progress requires breaking from the past." Throughout coalition space, humanity embraced its newfound independence with creativity and determination. Research previously constrained by Conclave restrictions flourished. Trade between human settlements increased tenfold through the instantaneous Phoenix network. Cultural exchanges that had been filtered through Conclave censors now flowed freely, creating a renaissance of human expression. But the Conclave was not finished. After 2 months of failed probing attacks and diplomatic isolation, they prepared their ultimate response: the Purification Fleet, a massive armada of 100 capital ships with planet-killing capabilities, assembled from the combined forces of the core Conclave worlds. High Speaker Vormith himself took command, determined to make an example of Earth that would discourage any other worlds considering defiance. The fleet's destination was not Earth itself, but the vulnerable colony on Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. The message would be clear: defy the Conclave, and your people will pay the price. As the Armada approached the Sol system, humanity monitored its progress without visible alarm. The coalition leadership had anticipated this escalation and prepared accordingly. On the Defiant, now stationed near Europa, Captain Hado Reed addressed his crew. "The Conclave believes they understand what we're capable of. They've adjusted their tactics based on our previous encounters. What they don't realize is that we've shown them only a fraction of what we've developed." When the Conclave Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Jovian system, they found not the scattered defense they expected, but a formation of 50 vessels unlike any they had encountered before. Spherical in design, without visible propulsion systems or weapons emplacements, the ships hung motionless in space. Aboard the Conclave flagship, High Speaker Vormith studied the strange formation with contempt. "Another human bluff," he declared. "Commence the attack pattern. Target their quantum node first, then their defensive infrastructure." The Conclave vessels opened fire, massive energy beams converging on the human formation. But instead of impacting the ships or their shields, the beams simply vanished, absorbed into what appeared to be localized distortions in space itself. "Gravitational lensing," whispered Dr. Watanabe on the Defiance bridge, watching the data stream from the Coalition's newest defense system. "They are firing into microsingularities we've positioned throughout the engagement zone. Their own weapons are being redirected into subspace." For 20 minutes, the conclave fleet poured devastating firepower into the human formation without effect. Then, without warning, every conclave vessel simultaneously lost power, weapons, engines, life support systems momentarily failing before emergency backups engaged. From the human fleet, a single transmission was broadcast to every ship in the conclave armada, translated into all their languages. The holographic image of Admiral Ortega appeared on every command deck. High Speaker Vormouth, this demonstration represents only one application of technologies we have developed despite your restrictions. We could have destroyed your fleet. Instead, we chose to disable it temporarily. Consider this both a warning and an invitation, a warning that the era of conclave domination is ending, and an invitation to imagine a different relationship between our civilizations. As power gradually returned to the conclave vessels, a second, unexpected transmission reached the High Speaker's flagship. It originated not from Earth, but from within the conclave fleet itself. One by one, representatives from 17 member species appeared in a joint broadcast, species that had, like humanity, found themselves marginalized within the conclave hierarchy. The Terran Coalition has extended alliance offers to all worlds seeking more equitable relationships than the conclave provides, announced the Arcturian representative, Kelvas. Many of us have accepted. This is not a revolution, High Speaker, it is an evolution. The galaxy is changing. The conclave can change with it, or it can fade into history. Aboard the Defiant, Hado watched as the conclave fleet slowly regrouped, then, remarkably, began withdrawing from the Jovian system. They are retreating, Commander Vermeer said, her voice reflecting the crew's astonishment. For now, Hado replied. But this isn't the end, it's the beginning. The question is, the beginning of what? As humanity's unexpected allies from within the conclave arrived through the Phoenix network for the first diplomatic summit of the new coalition, that question hung in the air. Would this be the beginning of a prolonged conflict between competing galactic powers? Or could it become something more revolutionary, the first step toward a genuinely equitable interstellar community? The stars no longer seemed cold or distant. They beckoned with possibility, with futures unwritten and paths unexplored. And humanity, finally free to follow its own course, stepped forward to meet them.